We're gonna get into these bonus chapters, but first, should we really have to buy a whole new book to read them? In case you missed it, Rebecca Yarros just released 2 chapters from Fourth Wing from Xaden's perspective, and they were included in the holiday edition of Fourth Wing. Holiday edition cover is beautiful, and I understand wanting to have that on your shelf, but when it comes to like being almost forced to buy it to read those 2 chapters, I've seen a lot of people taking issue with it, and kind of me too. Fourth Wing and Iron Flame were released extremely close together within the span of a year, and for me, who is an audiobooker who also likes to have the physical copy, I have bought Fourth Wing audiobook, normal Fourth Wing, the actual physical copy, Iron Flame audiobook, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm probably gonna buy Iron Flame hard copy. So between her 2 books, I've somehow bought 4 of them. Now, I know that's a me problem, but I'm gonna be honest, I feel like I shouldn't have to buy a whole nother book just to get 2 chapters from Xaden's perspective, which is where a Tumblr comes in handy. But we've been seeing this a lot recently with some of our favorite books. I know that a lot of the Sarah J. Maas girls out there, we want the bonus chapters, but we don't want to buy the Barnes & Noble edition or the Barnes & Noble edition chapter, and also buy the Walmart edition for the Walmart edition chapter. I think in total there were 5 special editions of one of her books coming out, and each of them had a couple chapters, which means if you wanted like an actual copy of all of them, you would have to buy 5 new books. That is easily $100. I understand something large enough that it could be its own standalone. Like back during the Divergent craze, Veronica Roth released a chapter from 4's point of view, which she released just for free on the internet, and it was sort of a teaser for her book about 4 that was the full story, and we saw more of his background and stuff like that, which I did pay for because it was long enough to be its own book. And Tahara Mafi does the same thing for Shatter Me and stuff like that, where we get these novellas of extra scenes. And obviously, like, I want to be an author one day. I want authors to be paid, but I also just think that this is sometimes hard on the readers. And in some instances, it's sort of worth either giving a little freebie online or, you know, giving us a Midnight Sun situation where we get the whole story from his perspective, which Rebecca, we want that. And I know in part this was probably not Rebecca's idea, and in Sarah J. Maas's situation, I genuinely doubt that was her idea either. I really think this is more the publishing companies, but because it is the author's name, that is sort of who the critique ends up coming back to. I would love to know your thoughts on this, because part of me does feel guilty reading these scenes on Tumblr, part of me doesn't. That being said, thank you to the person who uploaded them to Tumblr, because these chapters were really fun. The 2 chapters that we get are the sparring scene between Violet and Xaden, and Dane confronting Xaden after threshing to see if he actually stepped in to help Violet, which would mean he broke a lot of laws. So the sparring scene. I love a good sparring scene. I loved this scene in the book so much. He has figured out that she has poisoned all of her opponents so far. Xaden ends up fighting her because obviously she hasn't poisoned him, and he knows that if she actually gets in a fight one day, she's not going to be able to poison them in advance. That's not how it works. And it's really fun to be inside his head for this situation, because obviously we've already seen from Violet's point of view. It's very much a mix of like, she's attracted to him, but also she's scared that he's gonna kill her. And she's also just majorly pissed off at him. And he doesn't go easy on her. And in his head, he's like, I can't believe like this is all she has, which is a true testament to how much she learned after this moment. But I love that as he keeps disarming her, he keeps throwing the daggers to Dane's feet. And one thing I really like in these chapters was we kind of got to know Sgaeyl more as well. We don't see too much of her from Violet's perspective, and it's very rare that Violet and Sgaeyl really talk. And I feel like other than being this sort of aloof type of character, we don't get to know her that much. And so when Violet is snapping at Xaden and like saying how much she hates him and stuff, Xaden says that she's as merciless as Sgaeyl when it comes to her like sharp tongue. And it's very clear that Xaden is in the thick of it when it comes to the enemies to lovers arc, because he's fighting and having this girl throw daggers at him. And he's like, I cannot remember the last time I had this much fun, while simultaneously being distracted by how beautiful he thinks she is. It was really interesting to get to see what his shield looks like, because when we're in Violet's perspective, obviously we're in the library and like the scribe's quadrant, and she's shutting doors in that library as she goes. Whereas for Xaden, it's him digging his heels into the hills of Tyrrendor. One thing that's really fun to see is that we watch Xaden Xaden watch Violet and how she's processing all these emotions all at once. But here's where I'm getting a little confused. Is because we find out, Iron Flame spoiler. I will put the cover here if you need to mute, and you haven't read all of Iron Flame yet, and I mean the whole thing, all the way to the end, and then I'll take the picture down when we're done with the Iron Flame spoiler. So if Xaden can read people's intentions, I feel like that whole element was missing from these chapters. Because he pins her down and he sees her blushing, and we have this really cute moment where he's like, oh, like, I'm not the only one attracted here. And of course, we're all giggling and kicking our feet, but at the same time, I feel like there should be more intuition there if he really can read people's motivations and almost know their thoughts. Why is this just now occurring to him, you know? And maybe I'm anticipating too much with his power that he could understand that, because obviously if she was on the parapet and she thinks that he's really attractive, maybe he doesn't know that at all, because there's no motivation for action there, it's just a thought. But I just feel like he sort of would have known some of this stuff already. He tells Violet that she's been too obvious with her poison, and here we get a mention of Brennan, and Xaden thinks about how frustrated Brennan would be knowing that Violet wasn't doing a better job of, you know, hiding what she was doing. Xaden obviously wins, and he leaves the mat, and he hears Dane coddling her, which pisses him off. Then Garrett comes and makes him even more mad because he fully knows that Xaden likes Violet and is like making fun of him for it. Then in our second scene, we have the one where Dane is accusing Xaden of breaking the laws during threshing, and Xaden's internal monologue: seriously, of all the laws that I break, that's the one you're going with? Okay. This scene is where we really get a lot of conversation back and forth between Sgaeyl and Xaden. And she's telling him to just ignore Dane. He's just being irritating and it's not worth fighting over. And Xaden's like, this is all your fault because you love little Andarna and that's how we got in this situation. Which, it's really cute to see at least Xaden communicating Sgaeyl's feelings about this, because Sgaeyl doesn't really come across as like motherly or mushy at all. And so it's kind of cute to see how she was sort of the reason Taryn came and protected the baby. Xaden calls Violet a pint-sized morsel of arsenic. That's a new one, not gonna lie. So Xaden, to sort of defend himself, is explaining what he saw during threshing, because his argument is that he was watching but he wasn't taking action. And he says what you should be asking is whether Sgaeyl saw it, because Sgaeyl is the one that called Taryn to come intervene. Taryn then chose Violet sort of his own volition, but Sgaeyl's the reason that Taryn showed up, and why Violet's alive, and why Andarna's alive. And Sgaeyl's in the back of his mind, you did not just bring me into this nonsense. Xaden asked Dane if he would have stepped in if Taryn hadn't showed up. It's sort of like, maybe I was about to step in, but wouldn't you? That's your best friend. That's theoretically the person you love. And Dane sort of digs his heels in and is like, no, I wouldn't. There are rules. And Xaden's inner monologue, odd time to grow a spine, but good for him. Obviously, Violet is standing right there, and she just heard her best friend say, like, no, I wouldn't break the rules to save her life. Sgaeyl's in the background like, this is cruel, even for you. But honestly, like, that was kind of a delicious moment. And this is also when we get a real admission internally between Xaden and Sgaeyl that Xaden was already moving by the time Taryn landed. So he was ready to break those laws and was, like, sort of in the process of doing so. So Xaden is walking away, and he sort of feels guilty for making Dane say that in front of Violet. Meanwhile, Sgaeyl is making fun of Xaden for liking Violet, and Xaden tells her that he will volunteer for every cold weather mission. She doesn't knock it off. I just love Sgaeyl's response. Rude, as if your inability to control your own hormones should result in my discomfort. But part of her making fun of him for liking Violet is that she is 2 years younger than him, and then Xaden's like, well, you're 50 years younger than Taryn, so... I just love that he has a dragon that sort of challenges him. And then, of course, Taryn lands. And Xaden's response is the monstrosity that Sgaeyl calls a mate. But while he's there, he sort of opens his access. I don't know exactly how this works, but obviously he has the bond with Sgaeyl, and he can also feel the bond with Taryn. So he kind of feels for that bond since Taryn has just landed. And when he does that, he also feels what he calls like a silver bond between him and then Violet. And because if Violet dies, there's like a domino effect back to him dying, he decides to put Liam as her bodyguard since he can't always be with the first years. And he's like genuinely concerned that Violet is gonna fall for Liam. Violet didn't, the rest of us did. He turns just in time to see Dane and Violet kiss. Garrick is over here again laughing at how angry Xaden is, but he picks up on Violet's facial expression that she didn't actually like that. And that was it. Obviously, we wanted a lot more scenes. We honestly wanted the full book. These were two really solid scenes. I understand why she chose them, but I would have loved a little bit more. It sounds like Rebecca Yarros has not started book 3 yet, so I don't anticipate us getting a full fourth wing from Xaden's perspective anytime soon, but maybe once the entire series is done, we'll get it. Hopefully not like 15 years later, like we got Midnight Sun. What did you think about the Xaden chapters? What was your favorite part? What scenes would you be most excited for if we get the whole book from Xaden's perspective? I would love to see the parapet scene. I would also really love to see when she's in the tree and he's protecting her with the shadow power that he has. And I want to see him admit to Sgaeyl that he loves Violet before he actually admits it to Violet. I think that would be really fun. Please like this video if you liked it. Click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin. Thanks for watching. Bye!